Hello, everyone. Welcome to another In Conversation With. Today, I'm joined by Rebecca Winthrop from Brookings. I've had the fantastic good fortune of knowing Rebecca for many years, as I've had the honor of sitting on the Brookings Center for Universal Education's Leadership Council. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, how are you, Dan?
I am very good. Thank you for joining us remotely from the other side of the pond. So, to kick off, but maybe it's best for you to introduce yourself and share a bit more about the Brookings Center of Universal Education and your role in it.
Sure. Well, I am the director of the Center for Universal Education here at Brookings. And I am also a senior fellow. So I have two hats, which every center director has. I'm not the only one, which is for half the time I do research and look at key topics in education around the globe. And the other half of the time, I am managing with a team of wonderful people the center to advance the SDG 4.
Thank you. I mean, for those who may not be familiar, please do look at the Brookings and Center of Universal Education website. I've had some fantastic meetings and interactions with other members of the Leadership Council, the fellows, and even some of the researchers. Exceptional work that Brookings has done over the years, obviously, but also the centre has done. And so thank you for that. I suppose, EDT, we are, globally in education and skills, and our purpose is to enhance life opportunities through and make an impact with what we do. And so it's very relevant for us to engage with senior professionals in our sector, both international development and education globally. So really, really appreciate your time. What do you, Rebecca, perceive as, I suppose, the few significant global challenges in international educational development at the moment?
Oh my gosh. Well, we have a very long list, as a lot of what we do here at the Center for Universal Education is research trying to fill knowledge gaps. But we also, the other 50% of what we do is really trying to help work with partners to translate that evidence and knowledge into actionable changes in practice and policy. But if I had to summarize the very, very long list, I would put it, and this is my personal summary, into three main buckets that we see as huge headwinds to advancing SDG 4. One is inequality, educational inequality, young people and not having the same access to high quality learning opportunities around the world, meaning there's some kids who don't have the same access to high quality learning opportunities. They're often in rural areas. They're often low socioeconomic status, meaning their families have less financial resources. In some cases, they're ethnic linguistic minorities, so their families might not speak the language of instruction. In some cases, gender plays a role, etc. And they don't have as much access to high quality learning as other peers, often more well-to-do, often in urban areas, etc. And that has been true for many, 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 many decades, but it is still true. And there is sort of a last mile with education inequality, and COVID has made education inequality worse. So that is a huge problem. And then the second bucket, I think, and remember, SDG 4 is global. It says every country in the world should have educational opportunities that support lifelong learning. And I always say that create lifelong learners because it's a wide range of competencies and skills that are in SDG 4, the mix of which might be summarized to say you have the skills to be a lifelong learner. And most countries in the world, even for young people who are relatively well off, their schools, their education opportunities, their education programs are not necessarily equipping them with the full range of skills and competencies they need to thrive in today's world of work, in today's being a citizen, in today's communities, dealing with technology today. So I would put that bucket as relevance, that we are not necessarily really equipping young people with the right sort of mix of skills, even those who are having, by other measures, pretty good high quality learning opportunities. And then I would put the third big bucket, which is, again, one that has been around for a long time, but is exacerbated by technology, really around making sure that whatever we're doing in education is helping young people be constructive citizens. And I think with the advent of generative AI, fake news, the infodemic, as the UN Secretary General calls it, this is a huge, huge problem. And we haven't really tackled it. It's sort of on our doorstep, and we're trying to, we collectively, the global ed community, trying to figure out how to handle it.
I think it's fascinating. And we've had the opportunity to start to address some of these, particularly in inequality, gender specifically in girls' education. I love the point about lifelong learning and engaging the young. I know some governments are specifically putting in skills boot camps and trying to look at those who have dropped off out of education. Still a massive challenge. We see those opportunities both in the UK, but also in territories in sub-Saharan Africa. And as for the global citizenship and the kind of the concept of infodemic, I've never really appreciated that. That is a significant issue, and it's very prevalent with societal issues we see anywhere in the world right now. So I really can't point to one geography. But thank you for that. In terms of, you referenced briefly technology, and AI can be perceived to be positive, and in some countries irrelevant because we're just not there yet. But what do you think technology can do? I'm really interested in how underdeveloped educational regions benefit from technology when it's not as prevalent in some other parts of the world.
Yes. I mean, I have long been an advocate for the smart harnessing of technological capabilities to help us rethink education models, because I think that's what needs to happen in very under-resourced environments. So, and part of my beef with educational ed tech entrepreneurs and innovators is that a lot of time they focus on optimizing the existing model, which probably is easier to make money because the existing models where they can sell it to school, and I understand that. Dan, you've in your past life have really looked at this, how to sort of really move the model so different relationships are happening, and you're bringing in different actors to support learning. I think of the stuff you've done in your past life around math. So I'll give you some examples. I think that there's an organization called Imagine Worldwide, which is a kind of a bringer together of innovative technologies, 1 billion being one of them, which is a group out of the UK that does language learning. It has started by teachers, I don't know, I think it's almost 100 years ago. I might have gotten that wrong, but it's been around for a long time. And with government, with VSO, with nonprofits, and they've sort of brought together this model in Malawi and in a variety of other countries that really was trying to figure out, well, how do you teach literacy and numeracy in contexts where the average class size is extremely large, like in a Malawi where it's 100 kids. And by the way, the teachers are doing everything they can and the students are quiet and paying attention, but it's very hard. And so they've shifted the model where they use sort of offline solar-powered tablets, and kids rotate in and out to a little room where they have personalized learning on literacy and numeracy, and they can click on their picture and they can pick up where they left off. And through audio, they can listen to sounds while they're reading. They can, learn to write. They do um, a lot of skill building in those periods of time, which is only, I don't know, 45 minutes or something like that. So that is a new model. It's been highly effective. I was very proud, for full disclosure, to be a founding board member of that. Imagine Worldwide, I'm no longer, but I've been following their work deeply. And that's an example, I would say, of real leapfrogging. And there's other examples out there, but it's using technology to shift the model of what's possible. It's using appropriate technology. So, solar powered, et cetera. There's a lot of ways in which technology goes awry when people don't think about the context.
We could both talk about technology, as you know, for a long time, and my previous experience in ed tech we'd be on about it forever. But I think that's very relevant. Technology which doesn't overwhelm the teacher, doesn't undermine the teacher. But the leapfrog principle, that's really important. Let's do something different. Codifying existing processes just into technology it's great, but it doesn't take us forward. I think we've both seen great examples of it. There's a great example in Malawi, and I'll definitely look that up, and I encourage listeners and viewers to look that up as well. I've seen similar programs happening in other parts of sub-Saharan Africa where there is less adoption of AI, more adoption of base technology. I think you make the point very well. One of the base ed techs is access. Let's get access in place, and then we can move from there rather than jumping to an AI solution, which is a few generations away in some cases. But I think that makes a big difference. Organizations like EDT and other operators in international development, what do you think we should do to enhance our support, particularly in foundation learning and education? Obviously, we're reliant on funding agencies, we're relying on funding partners. What should we do, you think?
Well, you have your business model, so you're constrained by the support you get, as is most every nonprofit out there in the world. But in terms of support to foundational learning, I think there's a lot of work out there on support to educators and teachers, which is quite good. You have a wide range of approaches. You have structured pedagogy, you have teaching at the right level. Speaking of tech, you have some tech interventions through at-home sort of SMS messages. So there's a wide range of people working on that, and obviously that is crucial. I would say a couple things that I think drive success at a more macro level are making sure that there's alignment within an education system, within the curriculum, within how teachers are trained, and within what is assessed. And often those are slightly different, and you could train teachers all you want, but if you're assessing the success of students doesn't align to how you've trained your teachers, probably they're not going to translate that into practice, as an example. And that's sort of a mistake that a lot of education reforms have made over the years. I'm hoping we can stop making. So that's one. And then the second, I have become very convinced, actually starting before COVID, but really because of COVID, I think what we've learned, that there is a missing leg to the stool in foundational learning. And I say foundational learning because it's both motivation and engagement of students and sort of their self-regulation and ability to work with others alongside hard skills like literacy and numeracy, hard academic skills. So, and a missing link to that stool is families and communities and what they can do to support kids. We know that kids are really only in the school building probably 20%, depending on the country, and hours of instruction per day, 20% of their time, 15% of their waking hours from 0 to age 18. And that doesn't feel right. But if you add in summer vacations, weekends, after school, early childhood, it's actually the minority of time, which is a very important time, and we've got to get it right. But it does mean there's an entire sort of resource laying fallow in many ways, which is parents and caregivers. They can do a lot, and no parent or caregiver really wants to be their kid's teacher, even if they are even a teacher in another, an actual by profession. It's hard when it's your own kid, but they can be allies. And we've done a lot of research on this at Brookings, and I'm really convinced that it is, a bit of a sort of next edge terrain, and it's an area where we can get a lot of increased bang for our buck. There's a lot of research in the U.S. This has come out of the U.S. Longitudinal research that when caregivers, so families and teachers and school leaders all really trust each other and work well together, those are the schools that are 10 times more likely to be improving in academic and social emotional learning outcomes, as well as teacher retention. So I think that's a big next terrain for us to focus on.
And that's fascinating. And I think we can all hark back to personal experiences where that's worked. And sometimes, if you're right, it's very difficult to translate personal experiences into sort of professional conduct. That's fascinating learning. I mean, we're going to fortunate to work with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and FCDO on looking at some quality programs and technical assistance and looking at opportunities in globally with FCDO and with the Gates Foundation in sub-Saharan Africa to identify these opportunities, particularly in early learning, which I think is fascinating. Final question for you, really. In terms of the coming few years, I'm sure, we could look at the previous 50 years, but the next few years, what's Brookings going to do to make a difference, you think?
So we have a big network of scholars. Some are full-time, some are non-resident with us part-time. And
they're exceptional, by the way, just for the audience. And we've had access to them. We've spoken to them. Exceptional scholars doing some really interesting, fascinating work in far-flung places, including Nepal and Southeast Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. Yeah.
Thank you. You've done my description already, which is to say that, we have a big group of 80. Our team is a sort of diverse network of scholars across 40 countries. And so it's hard to describe everything that they're doing. So I'm going to talk about sort of, because all of it is really filling a gap, trying to push a piece of the SDG for Agenda Forward. So in terms of the overarching, I'll talk about a couple of things that we're thinking about as a collective. One is really looking at moving more deeply into mental models, sort of power dynamics and relationships, really examining those in our research and our work that shape policies, practices, and resource flows. So this comes straight out of system transformation theory and work. And for a long time, I would say we've been around for 20 years. So probably the first decade was very much looking at policy change, practice change, and resource flow change. And we've learned and we've done a lot of good. And I'm very proud, particularly at seeding the global education ecosystems. Lots of the existing global ed orgs spun out from our research and our convenings and our work. But we've also learned that what we do need to go a bit deeper to really look at sort of those three things: power dynamics, relationships, and mental models, because that really shifts if a policy change is going to be sustained between one minister and another minister, between one funder and another funder, if the people in the system are really committed to it. So that's one area, and we're trying to figure out how to do that effectively. So that's one area where we hope to make a contribution. A second area where we're hoping to make a contribution, and again, this is over all our really great scholar-specific projects and work, is really trying to get a more refined vision of what it means to be a global institution, trying to advance work that is embedded in local communities around the world. And this is more than just global north, global south, because the SDGs are global. We work globally now. And so we work in try to advance the SDGs in marginalized communities right here in the US, as well as in parts of Australia, right alongside sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, Asia, etc. So what does it mean for us? Is our most value add? And we're trying to figure that out together with a consortium of 10 civil society organizations that happen to be in the global south, we're really trying to figure out where we most add value with them, to hear from them. And I think a lot of it has to do with the big picture look across contexts. That seems to be really important. A lot of it has to do with amplifying local voices when they, creating some of those platforms when they need to be heard and aren't being heard. A lot of it has to do with figuring out what the latest evidence is, sort of staying top and making sure that it's shared so people can take it and use it as they see fit. So we're still figuring that out, and we're figuring out how to be a good partner in that way together. So that's a second area. And then a third, and this is maybe because I've just come from a meeting about it this morning, so it's top of mind. But a third area is that we're really trying to lean in much more. And again, this is across a large percentage of the different scholars in their work, lean in much more to student agency, student voice, and student engagement. This idea of really, how do young people feature as the heroes of their own education story? And it's high time that they do. And most often in most education research and most education policy, they don't, even though in our hearts they do. The way we conduct research, the way we formulate policies, it's about what to do to them, to support them. So that's an area that we're also heavily leaning into.
Oh, that's fascinating. Listen to the learner and make sure system changes are sustainable. If we can achieve any of those, it would be a fantastic transformation globally in education. Rebecca, thank you so much for your time. It's always an absolute pleasure talking to you. And every time I talk to you, or for that matter, anyone at Brookings, I walk away with just a little bit more knowledge about what's happening in the world. So thank you very much for your time, Rebecca.
My pleasure, Dan. Take care.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us again here In Conversation With. And I will join you all again soon with another interview. Thank you very much.